And I think you can just do it. Just making those small changes, it does have a big, big impact, and you can make changes. And, when I look at my clients, I see amazing transformations in energy levels, and the difference between I'm feeling drained and I'm not looking after myself, a little bit jaded, to, oh my goodness, I love my life, I'm energetic, and I'm doing all of these things. But, it's find what works for you and make these changes and just enjoy it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I have a doctor with me. The doctor's in the house, and the doctor's joining me from a place that is on my bucket list that I definitely want to go to. The doctor is in session today from Spain. Dr. Orlena Kerek is here. Thank you, doctor. Nice to meet you again. How are you? How are things?
I am super, super well. And thank you so much for having me. And you definitely need to come to Spain. It's beautiful here.
Oh, come on. Yes, it sounds so gorgeous. I love the language. I love the country. Apparently it's very warm sometimes. But we shared on our pre-interview chat a little while ago that, oh, yes, I went for a swim in the ocean today. It's like, what? That sounds amazing. And you're going to do that as well again. So tell me a little bit about Spain before we jump into your background. Just a little bit about Spain. What do you love about Spain?
Well, this is a really interesting thing. We do live in Spain, but we don't speak Spanish here. We speak Catalan. You've probably heard of Barcelona. We live in that region of Spain, which is actually called Catalonia, and would quite like its independence. I don't want to get into politics, but a lot of people in Catalonia, well, some people are quite happy being part of Spain. So we're in a Spain is a huge, huge, huge country with a really interesting history, which I have to confess I didn't know heaps about until I moved here. But the little area I live in is near the Mediterranean Sea, and the Mediterranean is beautiful for swimming in. It's crystal, crystal clear, and most of the time it forgets it's a sea, and it's just like a giant swimming pool. And occasionally there's a few waves, and I say, oh, the Mediterranean's remembered it's supposed to be a sea today.
Wow,
it's a fabulous place to live, a fabulous place to visit as well.
And the people are nice. And
yes.
Right. Wow. So, but your accent is not Spanish.
No.
So you're not from there originally. Tell me where you're from originally.
So my father is Hungarian, so European blood in me. Okay. He left a long time ago, but I was born and bred in the UK and trained as a doctor in the UK, and then decided that I wanted to do something else. I wanted to travel. And I actually did think I would be able to work as a doctor here. That's a very long story. And I did work for a short period of time, but essentially I don't do clinical work anymore. But yeah, I love the UK, but it's cold. People work hard. It rains a lot. And so we moved essentially for lifestyle choices because I just wanted something different for my life.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your doctorate, and what is your doctorate in?
No, I'm a medical doctor rather than a PhD doctor. So, in the UK, you train straight away. So we don't do medicine we don't do a degree and then pre-medicine. We go straight in and study medicine, and you get what's called an MBCHB, which is a master's in surgery and medicine. And then I went on and did postgraduate exams in pediatrics, and I loved doing pediatrics. And, part of my journey was giving up that clinical work, which was bittersweet because there's a lot of not great things, night shifts for one, and weekend shifts. They're not fabulous if you've got, other commitments. But the job, and, it's a very stressful job, but very, very rewarding. So, and very a privileged job as well. I always used to remember when I was ever in theatre, which was, a surgical theatre for whatever reason. Oh my goodness, I feel like I'm in such a privileged place to be here helping people. Yeah. And not everybody gets to be in that environment. So it was an amazing journey. And as I say, not one that I really intentionally gave up, but I did, out of that sort of mess of moving to Spain and thinking, oh my goodness, I'll just work here, I did manage to create a totally different life intentionally. And that life is flexible and allows me to do things like swim in the sea and spend time with my children and live what I say, I live a life of luxury. And I don't mean, I have Louis Vuitton handbags or anything like that. I just mean I get to spend my time how I want to spend it. And part of that is working, which I love doing. And part of that is being with my family, which I love doing. And part of that is doing other things by myself, like swimming and cycling and other exciting things.
Amazing. That sounds like such a beautiful life that you've created for yourself. But with all that training and all that knowledge, I'm sure that you would like to apply that and tap into that and keep that alive in what you do, because that's a commitment to go through and to learn and to know that information. I obviously don't have any clue about any of that, but just the amount of study time and development for you personally to achieve that. How do you stay in touch with that? How do you apply what you know from your previous roles to what you're doing today?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And, I think all that study and all that learning, well, it was something I enjoyed doing, actually. And the human body is just absolutely amazing. I remember when we were at medical school being taught about our kidneys and the professor saying, you may be clever, but you're not as clever as your kidneys. And it is true. The human body is just an astounding piece of technology that we have. And to answer your question, I think really my focus is very much on healthy living and looking at, people in hospital. So thinking back to when I was working in a hospital, I did a brief amount of adult medicine, not very much, but as part of my training, we did adult medicine, and looking around the wards and seeing people in hospital and kind of realizing, oh my goodness, so much of illness these days is lifestyle related. And loads of people, they just don't realize that they find themselves, the first time they realize, oh my goodness, I could do something differently. They're in hospital, it's too late. And it's almost like, oh, well, if you could go back 20 years, I could teach you how to eat healthily, how to do all of these things, and you wouldn't be here now.
Yeah.
So that's one of the questions that I find fascinating. And one of the things that I like to help people with is, why is it that so many people carry on doing what they're doing? And I always say to people, it's not a knowledge gap that people have. People know roughly what healthy living is. People might disagree exactly on what that means, but most people know. If you ask them, what could you do differently? Most people have a reasonable answer. And so I always think people have a doing gap rather than a knowledge gap. I know that I could be more healthy, but yet I carry on doing the same thing that isn't healthy for me. Why is that? And part of it is habits. We just get into habits. We get into this way of being. And part of it is kind of that it's not going to happen to me. I don't believe it's going to happen to me. Denial, I think that is.
Yeah.
And thinking, I'm just going to carry on. I like doing what I'm doing. And that fear of the unknown as well. And so having someone to help you and say, do you know what? It can be easy. It can be fun. You can create this amazing life. You don't have to go swimming in the sea. You have to find whatever it is that really lights you up. But you can make that transformation, and you can do it such that it really, you're going to be healthy afterwards. You can buy yourself 10, 15 years of life just by making small changes that are enjoyable and fun. I always think of myself as a doctor. I'm the doctor who teaches you that you don't need a doctor. I'm the doctor who does the doctoring before you get to the doctor, because by the time you've got to the doctor, most often, or not most often, but often it's too late. They can do things, but if you've had a heart attack, you can't undo having a heart attack.
Yeah. The damage is done. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your journey now. What is your main focus? I know that you do podcasting and you're guesting on podcasts and you're out there sharing the message about how to live a healthy life. What is your message right now, and who's your audience that you're reaching?
Yeah. So, my audience is mostly women in their mothers. So I think a lot of people like me I have 4 children, and they also, what's important to them is teaching their children healthy habits. So that extra piece that I offer, and that extra piece of, I know what it's like to have kids who don't want to eat this and don't want to eat that. And yet, how do we teach our kids as well? So mostly I work with mothers, and I teach them what I call simple habits. So it's about healthy eating, exercise that lights you up. Sleep is another really important factor, actually. And then mindset and emotional wellness and stress levels, those are another really big factor. And thinking about, how can we apply all of these things to our life? Everybody's busy. So, it's not me giving you 20 recipes and saying, here you go, cook these, because that doesn't work, because you might get to recipe 3 and then go, I can't do this anymore. And so it's looking at, well, how can you make this work for your life? And how looking at those repeated behaviors and going, okay, so you're finding your kids really stressful, and then you're finding them stressful and you're turning to food, to junk food. How can we unravel this and make it so that you don't find your kids stressful and you're not turning to junk food? So those are the sort of things that I teach people.
So it's all around, I guess, a lot of mindset and a lot of what you focus on and what you think about and what's important to you is what your mind feeds you and supports, right? So if you want a healthy mindset, then you really need to focus on healthy alternatives and better choices. And then your mind will be like, well, that's important to you. Then we're going to make that more obvious to support what you believe, right?
Yeah. So there's lots of different tools. And so I think coming at it from different angles is really, and one of the things you're talking about is your identity and thinking about your identity. And it's a really powerful tool to have a look at how you think of yourself and think, well, what is your identity? So for example, my identity is very much, I am a healthy person. I look after myself. I eat vegetables. I do exercise. So when quarantine came, I just carried on doing those things because, well, I always ate vegetables. So it wasn't, oh my goodness, I made healthy decisions because I'm this super amazing person. It was just, hey, this is what I do. I just go to the market and I buy vegetables. And this is how life carries on. And once you can really ingrain that and come from that place of, hey, I am somebody who looks after my life, then it really aids you in how you make decisions. And so when you start making decisions, and let's face it, making decisions, our brains do not like making decisions. And when we put ourselves in a place where we're making decisions, our brains are not going to make good decisions for very long. They might make a good decision for the first couple of times. And then the third one, they're going to go, yeah, I can't do this. And that's basically what relying on willpower is. When people say, I have to grit my teeth and stick out this diet. Well, the answer is no, because it's not going to work. It'll work for a short time, but it's not going to work for a long time. But if you come back to that identity piece and really think about, okay, I'm somebody who eats vegetables a lot of the time. I've made so many decisions already that when I'm in that situation, I'm not having to make that decision again. And so it's a really useful tool to think about creating a new identity.
What are some of the things that are your focus at the moment that you're developing or thinking about or working through for your clients and people that are reaching out for your help? Is there something that you're actively pursuing right now? Something new?
I have so many things.
Yeah, probably, right?
Well, I have my book that came out, oh my goodness, when was it? April, and it's now July, and it feels like years ago.
Wow. Yeah, well, you definitely got to talk about that.
So I have my book. I have a little course that I have recently just launched, which is an End Emotional Eating program. And it's basically my system and how you can apply it to yourself. And the reason I talk about emotional eating is because a lot of people come to me because they want to lose weight. And why are people overweight? Because they overeat. Why do they overeat? Well, really, it's all wrapped up in emotions and basically people turning to food for comfort. Or, perhaps it's that, well, actually I eat because that's how I bond with my family. And we have, Friday evenings, we all sit around and eat pizza and ice cream. And that's when I feel happy. But you can see that that's wrapped up in emotions and that there are other ways of finding those emotions without having to turn to food. Yes. So that's what I've got going on at the moment. And I have a group program, which is, my sort of higher ticket price, which it's a lifetime group program. I'm very excited about that because I started it off not as lifetime. And I kind of got to the stage where I could see that people really learn these tools and they do really, really well. But you know what? Life happens. And as life happens, things slip a little bit. And I want to be there to support people. So that's why I made it lifetime. And in the future, I would like to adapt my program a little bit for people who have diabetes, who want to reverse diabetes. I haven't quite started that yet. I need a guinea pig who is willing to work with me so that I can adapt all the tools that they want.
They might be listening right now.
They might be. Yeah. But so it's all kind of set up. It would really, like, all the systems are there. I would just do a different plan right at the beginning for them. And as I say, I haven't found somebody yet. So who knows? If you have diabetes and you want to reverse it, then come and chat. And
reach out. Yeah, the doctor's waiting for you. That's amazing. That's really, I love listening to what people are creating and thinking about for the future. And obviously as well to celebrate what you've already created. So let's talk about the book as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Can you tell everybody about this?
I can. It is called Building Simple Habits to a Healthy You. And it essentially talks about my 4 pillars. So those are the 4 pillars that I mentioned: nutrition, exercise. I always talk about exercise that lights you up, sleep, and emotional wellness. And it's about building habits and systems and routines. And essentially, it has my system that you can use, and it tells you what to do, but it's not a in-depth book. It's not like, oh my goodness, I want to know the latest scientific research. It's a much more doing book. And so there's worksheets in it which say, where are you and where would you like to get to? And so help you to map out how you're going to get there. So for example, if you're not going to work with a health coach and you think, okay, I can do this by myself, well, then you need to have a system to do it by yourself. And that system I would recommend is work on one small thing. And then once you've got that small thing established, work on another small thing. Okay. Whereas when you're working with a health coach, they can push you a little bit more because they're constantly sort of seeing where you are and think, okay, this is working fine, or this is too much for you. So there's that constant feedback. So if you're doing it by yourself, I think just do one, another. And so the second half of the book is essentially habit trackers, and there's a gratitude journal in there. Things like meal planning, so that you can track where you're coming from. Because that's another thing that I see, that people make these changes and then that becomes their new norm. And so then they go, oh, I haven't made any changes. It's like, you have made changes. Of course you've made changes. Look back to where you were 3 months ago. You've made amazing changes. But if they're not tracking it and looking at it, they kind of forget that they've made any changes. So the habit trackers are really useful to show you that you are making changes and to remind yourself to do those new habits.
That's great. I love that it's a doing book. It's not just information and then you have to figure it out, that you have built that in there. It's a great idea. I love that.
Thank you. I'm not somebody, so on my podcast, I don't have big, long scientific words. I leave those to other people. I like the simple words. I talk about habit brain and thinking brain. And, those are clearly not the scientific words, but I don't want it to be too scientific. Yes, what I teach is based in science, but as I say, it's more about doing it. And why aren't you doing this? And how do you make it easy for yourself to do it?
So for those that do want to do this alone and try to build up their life and eat healthy, do all the right things on their own, is there any simple advice for somebody that is trying to do this themselves? Because the opposite that I want to talk about. Go buy my course. Go buy the course. Yes, there you go. But the opposite is.
Well, I think that the emotional eating thing, it does. Yeah. It comes with the copy of the book, a PDF copy of the book, and so essentially, I've put together this package where you understand what emotional eating is, and one of the things I would say is, once you understand what's going on in emotional eating and realize that you're just a human person with a human body, and it's not that you're broken and it's not your fault, it is just perfectly normal. That's how we work. And one of our driving forces is to go and seek glucose. And it's one of our driving forces that has kept us alive for so many years. But unfortunately now it's sort of out of place a little bit, in that, yes, of course we do need to eat, but food is so readily available that we don't need to keep on looking for that food.
True. Yes.
So they can buy this, they can do all of that. And then it does walk them through as well. There's a second part of it if people want to do that, which is, healthy eating. What is healthy eating? How can I start healthy eating? And I think they need to go hand in hand together, because you may have a look at the emotions and go, okay, I've got this emotional thing. But if you're constantly eating sugar and processed foods, you're just kind of poking yourself every now and then. It's sort of saying, do you want it? Do you want it? Do you want it? And how do you want it? So you have to go hand in hand with, okay, I'm actually going to make changes to how I eat as well. I'm going to think about this emotional eating, but I'm also going to be eating healthy food. But I'm going to find healthy food that I love, that is tasty, that's enjoyable. Yeah. And once you've got those two, then you're good moving forwards. And then, that's the beginning of that snowball effect. And you start doing it. And before you know it, you're doing lots of other things as well.
So the other side of that, I guess, would be doing the same health journey, but doing it within a community. What's the benefits of that compared to maybe doing it on your own? Is there a big upside to doing this with somebody?
Yeah, I think there is. And, if we look at the world trying to lose weight and it doesn't succeed, why doesn't it succeed? And the answer is because it gets a little way in and then it goes, oh, life, I've forgotten about this, or it didn't work. I'm not getting the results that I see. And then you give up. And that's the worst place to be. And to be perfectly honest, the vast majority of people, if they just stuck to what they were doing and said, right, I'm going to do this for an entire year and see at the end of the year where we are, well, they probably would notice big differences, but they didn't. They only got a few months in and then they stopped. And I think the difference really is you have accountability, you get motivation, you get somebody who is feeding back to you and saying, okay, well, we're going to sort out your problem, but also, okay, you need to prioritize this more than you need to prioritize that. Or have you noticed that you've made this change, but this thing is coming up? Yeah. So you get that constant feedback, but you also get, when you're talking about a community, I've got, my community, I do group coaching and I love it. The ladies are amazing and they help each other up. And you'd think it would be a bit like, you might compare people and go, oh my goodness, she's lost so much more weight or she's so much further ahead than me. But actually people are saying, yeah, but listen, when I was in your position, this is what really worked for me. And this mindset change that I made really helped me move forward. So instead of just having me, you have a group of people who are there and cheering you on and going, look, if I can do it, I'm just a normal person too, then you can do it too.
The one thing too, I've listened to other authors, and they when they have children and a family, as mothers or fathers, they always seem to give their best to their families, and whatever's left over is theirs. So a great example, probably not a great example of a food choice, but a mother who makes cookies and gives all of the best cookies to her family, and she eats the broken ones, the burnt ones, the not so nice ones. So they're always giving their best to their family and just living on the scraps, basically what's left over. As a healthy choice for adults, we need to make ourselves a priority and not just our family all the time and be giving. We need to focus in on ourselves and our own health, right? Absolutely. So what kind of healthy food choices can adults make in their midlife, 40s and 50s and 60s, something that they can do today as far as healthy eating choices that can give them energy and sustain you and be a first step maybe on that path?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And one thing I would say, and I totally agree with you, and one thing I see a lot with mothers is they always put themselves at the bottom of the list.
Yes.
But the good news is that healthy eating for adults and children is exactly the same, or it's very, very similar. If your goal is weight loss, there are certain things that I would recommend you do, but it's very easy to combine the two. And a lot of people have this idea of, oh my goodness, I have to give my kids chicken nuggets and chocolate ice cream, and I have to sit and eat rabbit food. And the answer is no. You should be eating all the same foods, basically. And, as I say, if you've got picky children, there might be a few different tweaks that you can make, but essentially you're making one meal and everybody's eating the same food. But to come back to your question of, what can people eat? Well, that's another really good question. And I think for me, what I teach is the Mediterranean style diet. So plant-based is the number one for whether you want to lead a long and healthy life or whether you want to lose weight. It supports both of those. And the Mediterranean style diet, in my mind, just has a little bit more research behind it. And the difference between the Mediterranean style diet and other plant-based diets is essentially olive oil. It's essentially that you're getting your fat from extra virgin olive oil. Okay. But what is that kind of diet? It's high in fruit and vegetables and nuts and seeds, lentils and legumes, pulses, beans, that kind of thing. Some healthy protein, but clearly an absence of packaged foods. And that's not news to most people. Like packaged foods, processed foods are not part of a healthy diet. And I think anybody who says anything about health agrees with that process, particularly the highly processed foods. So there is a difference between highly processed foods and less processed foods. And it's the highly processed foods that you really want to be avoiding.
And the one thing I know here in Western culture we have is the convenience of all the bad food, where you can go to a drive-through and you can get your whatever. And it's so convenient and it's so cheap. So for families that are on a budget, they unfortunately seem to default to some of the worst food choices out of convenience or price. And so for mothers with young families and things, is there a secret as far as, because it seems like the healthiest choices are more expensive, and again, not as convenient. Is there a way to beat that?
I don't think that's true. I do think that it is. I think one of the other things that's really difficult as well is that children now grow up in this society where we see all of these foods. So, essentially what you want to be doing is presenting your children all the time with healthy foods. And if you give them a healthy diet and they can choose from a healthy diet, then they're always choosing healthy foods. But the problem is they're seeing all the other things from outside. And it is so much easier to go and buy ice cream. It's really hot here. My kids love ice cream. It's really easy for me to go to the supermarket and buy ice cream. Now, a healthier alternative is something like a banana smoothie. But you have to work that into your system and into your family so that your children are accepting that. And, again, it comes down to mindset. It's a bit like a seatbelt. If you think about children and seatbelts, you would never dream of putting a child in a car and not putting the seatbelt on. But there isn't actually anybody there saying you have to do this. Well, the law says that you have to do that, but there isn't a policeman looking at you as you put your child in. It's just part of your brain, and you do that without thinking about it. And it's the same with kids and food. Essentially, if you've got that framework in your brain of this is what we eat, and your framework can be slightly different. You choose exactly where the rules are. So you might say, well, we have dessert on Friday and Saturday, and dessert can be shop-bought ice cream. Or it could be, we never have shop-bought ice cream. You get to choose what those rules are, but you also have to apply them. And kids' job is to push back. They will constantly be saying, oh, I want this, I want this. And that's just normal kid behavior. In fact, I see in my kids eat a lot of fruit and vegetables, but they're constantly asking for fruit and leaving their vegetables. And they say, we had broccoli for dinner and beans. We've had our dinner now because it's 7 o'clock here. Oh, I want to eat fruit. And I'm like, eat some vegetables. And so it is constantly getting that balance right, of not pushing and making a big deal of it, but saying, hey, this is it. You get to eat this. You can choose this. If you're hungry, eat this. And I always talk about the celery test for if you're hungry. So people sort of say, oh, and, am I hungry? And my kid's saying, I want to eat fruit. I want to eat fruit. And I'm saying, well, if there's an acceptable vegetable and you're going to eat some of that, you'd eat it if you were hungry. And so for adults, it's like, well, are you hungry? Would you eat a piece of celery or a piece of cucumber? Or it has to be something that's acceptable to you, not something that you think is disgusting. Or a carrot stick. If it's true hunger, you will eat those foods. And if you say, oh no, I'm only hungry for chocolate, my response is, there is no such thing as only hungry for chocolate. That's not hunger.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great definition. That's a comfort food. That's a emotional eating. That's something tied to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, I think when we talk about emotional eating, everybody emotionally eats, but it's where is that level that emotional eating is now becoming harmful? And that's the issue. So on one level, I would say, do you know what? Anytime we eat sweets, candy, anything which has got a lot of sugar in, that is emotional eating because, you're eating for the pleasure of the food rather than to nourish yourself. We're eating for enjoyment, which is an emotion. But that's okay if you do it within a certain limit. It's when that becomes out of hand that it becomes a problem.
So that's the moderation piece.
Yeah, exactly.
So, because that's that line, right? Everything in moderation. Maybe not.
Nothing is forbidden in moderation.
There it is. Yes. That's I like that much better because everything is okay. Well, not everything. There's some nasty things out there that you should not be eating. It's amazing. So tell quickly before we close off, tell me a little bit about your podcast as well. People are listening to this podcast. I would love for them to jump over to yours and continue the conversation. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, thank you for asking. It's called Fit and Fabulous at 40 and Beyond, and it comes out on Tuesday. And essentially, it's a little weekly boost of you can do it, keep going. And we might discuss emotional eating, or I might get a guest on. So it's something along the lines of why bother with healthy eating, and how can I make this, or healthy living, and how can I keep going with the healthy living?
Beautiful. I love it. And I love that you have it all niched down. You have a great audience. You've built it with a great theme. It's not too wide and generic. you're focused in and you're helping people. That's great. So as far as coaching, the book, all of the things that we can access from the doctor, is there a great contact? Where do we go? How do we find you? How do we connect?
So I do have this amazing video actually, which you can sign up to. So if you go to my website, it's drorlena.com. I have to spell my name, Orlena. And you can access the podcast from there. But at the top, there's a video that you can access, which is called the 5 mindset. You have to say this slowly. The 5 mindset shifts that I teach my clients so that they can lose weight and lead a high energy life and a long life. And, those 5 shifts that we were talking about prioritizing yourself and things like that. And if you don't make those shifts, essentially, it doesn't matter what people teach you because you're just going to go back. So, if you don't fix the emotional eating, I can tell you what to eat and you'll stick to it for a bit, but then the emotional eating is going to come back. So you can sign up for that video. And then if you get emails from me, you can reply to those emails. And I always reply to people. I love hearing from people and I love chatting to people and offer people a 15-minute chat for free. If people are thinking, hey, will your system work for me? Well, the answer is probably yes, but the answer is, well, are you prepared to make changes is really the question. And so they can sign up for that free chat there as well if they want to.
That's great. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions about swimming in the ocean as well, Dr. Orlena will definitely help you answer that question because she loves it. And every time we speak, she's either going to or coming from swimming. So I'm living vicariously through you. And excited to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. And I know I'm taking you away from your swimming. So any last words you want to leave with the listeners about living a healthy lifestyle and how we can do better?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And I think you can just do it. Just making those small changes, it does have a big, big impact and you can make changes. And when I look at my clients, I see amazing transformations in energy levels and the difference between I'm feeling drained and I'm not looking after myself, a little bit jaded to, oh my goodness, I love my life. I'm energetic and I'm doing all of these things. I've got a client who loves tennis and she's always doing tennis and another thing called pickleball. She loves pickleball. I have no idea what pickleball is. Yeah, apparently it's amazing.
Yeah.
But, it's find what works for you and make these changes and just enjoy it.
And when you don't know, research. And when you research, you will find Dr. Orlena Kerek right here. You will find her and all the links. And this is the person you need to reach out to and talk to. Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate having you on. And I'm not a mother in my 40s, but I'm still going to go to your podcast and listen. And I really appreciate the fact that you've created this for people. And I'm a fan.
Thank you so much.
It's so nice to meet you. So great to have you on. Everyone, please go check out the website. We'll have all the links, obviously, in the show notes. Again, thank you for your time, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy your swim. Hey, guys, thank you for listening to the podcast. Jump over to livingthenextchapter.com, our website, and you will see a spot where you can leave a voice message. We'd love to hear your feedback. We're trying to make it as easy as possible to hear from you. So if you want your voice on this podcast, yes, that's possible. Go to livingthenextchapter.com. Click the little microphone icon, leave a voice message. And we'll insert your message into the podcast. Tell us where you're listening from. Tell us your favorite guest. Maybe there's a guest we should have on the podcast. Maybe you should be our next guest. Leave us a message. livingthenextchapter.com. Again, thank you so much for listening. Please share this podcast episode with one person. That's all we're asking. Meet you over there at livingthenextchapter.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. I'd love to hear from you. Till the next episode. It's coming up right away. Be sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you for being part of Living the Next Chapter. Thank you for supporting our guests. Have a great day.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.